Greetings and salutations, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the founder and CEO of the Scribblers Den. Thank you so much for watching. I am super glad that you're hanging out with me today. Today's topic is going to be a bit of a pep talk because too often I see writers getting frustrated by the societal expectations of being a writer and society defining what success looks like despite not truly understanding how being an author actually works. So today we're going to be reclaiming our narratives and finding a new measure of success. Societal standards exist everywhere in pretty much every aspect of our lives: beauty, fitness, education, family expectations, gender expectations, etc., etc. And they also exist in the world of publishing and writing. But I do have good news. It is all made up. And we get to challenge those narratives and make our own version of what success looks like, just like we get to create our own beauty or gender expectations. Writers, one thing that writers are constantly being expected to do is to be an overnight success, which nothing like that actually exists. Everybody who has been labeled as an overnight success has spent a lot of time getting to where they are. And there was a lot of work beforehand. And then just all of a sudden, people really started to notice, wait, this person's really good. We need to give them more attention. So that term doesn't even actually mean what we think it means, right? It's somebody who has put in years of work and then finally they're getting the attention that they actually deserve. And the second, other really common societal expectation is if you're a writer, then you've only made it if you have hit the New York Times bestsellers list. But few of us are going to ever reach either of those goals, either being an overnight success or being a New York Times bestseller. I'm not being a Debbie Downer. This is just statistical facts, right? You might kind of compare it to the amount of high school athletes who are convinced they're going to go pro and be drafted right out of high school. I think over half of my students usually say something like that. Very few of them are going to actually realize that dream, right? Does it mean that they aren't going to be successful or that they might not ever compete professionally? Absolutely not. But the numbers, right? When you look at the number of actual professional athletes in the world, and you look at the number of students who are playing various athletic and sport things at their high schools, those numbers don't match, right? Same thing with writers. We're everywhere. There's millions of us. That New York Times list is very small. That's 10 people a week. And you'll notice that there's a lot of names that are on there continuously because they've built up followings and had all those years to really get in there, right? So that's why I'm saying it. So, my fellow authors, we need to really redefine what success means. And being on the New York Times bestseller list isn't necessarily an indicator of success. It's something that society understands, and they're like, oh yeah, you've done this, so therefore you're a good author. And that's not always true, right? There are definitely books out there that are phenomenal. And then there are other books that hit for a single week, and then you never hear from that author again. There are also books that show up on the list despite not being of any substantial quality. And if you remember the Handbook for Mortals debacle from, I think, 2018, possibly 2019, and how YA Twitter just basically Scooby-Dooed the truth of how that book had gamed the system in order to hit the list at number one and knock Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give off the list. Absolutely wild, right? And that, I think, is the only book that I will definitively say should never have been on the list. But they just showed you by doing it, they showed how arbitrary some of that system is. If you're ever really looking for some rabbit holes to go down, learning about how they decide what books hit the New York Times list is really kind of fascinating. And it pulls back the curtain on a lot of different things. They use sales records, but they only do certain stores. It's not all sales records. And there's all these different little rules. And so it's very strange, right? But it's still something that most authors have as one of their goals because it's something the world outside of publishing understands and considers a token of having made it. I know so many authors who have never hit the list, and yet their writing is so solid. They have devoted fan bases. And in my opinion, some of them are of better quality than some of the books that do hit the list. And of course, that is my subjective opinion. I don't make the list. I don't get to make those decisions. So it doesn't matter a whole lot or mean anything to anyone but me. But I'm always sad. I'm like, why isn't this person on there? I feel like they should really be on there. Why are more people not reading so-and-so? So it's something that is an arbitrary marker that has a lot of strange rules of how to get into that club. And it's not necessarily something that actually defines whether or not you are a successful author or not. All right. A second huge misconception that I think exists in the world, again from society, is that if an author sells a book, they're going to be rich, right? And of course, yes, there are amazing six-figure book deals out there, but most authors are getting much more modest deals in like the 20K and under range, right? Which when you do that math, you think, wow, I spent 2 years writing this and I put a lot of time and effort in, and then they're giving you like $20,000 for it, to then go out and sell it and produce it and do all those different things. When you like do the math, you're not getting a very good hourly rate. It's wild, right? But does that mean that your book and writing isn't phenomenal if you're not getting a six-figure deal? Absolutely not. It's just another one of those criteria that authors tend to look to in order to gauge whether or not they're successful. And as authors, we have very little control over those things. It depends on what editor decides that they want to work with our book. It depends on what's trending. It depends on if another editor also wants it, and maybe you can have them go to auction, things like that. And publishers will choose like one or two titles. They're like, these are going to be our titles for the year. This is it. These are the ones we're giving big deals to. This is what we think is going to be really big, and this is what we're going to market. And everybody else, they're like, here's some change. Have a great day. We published your book. We're not doing anything else. So those are really good books. Those books that they're saying, yeah, we'll publish this, but we're not going to market it. And we're not going to give you a six-figure deal. Those are such good books. And I highly recommend that you read them, because they're just as good, if not better, than some of those books that they're paying those six-figure deals for, right? So my challenge for you is to look past all of the capitalistic nature of your writing and book sales. And I know that is hard to do in this economy. We need income in order to have a roof over our heads, food on the table. But not getting that big book deal or hitting the list are just two measures of successes that we kind of have to let go of, right? And we need to find more holistic things to look at to measure how successful we are. So instead of looking how you're, instead try looking at how you're contributing to the literary canon as a whole. How is your writing impacting readers? Who's gushed over your writing? Has a reader sent you a message saying that your book saved them? Is it uncovering some vital cultural aspect that needs brought to the light? Is it challenging the norms and expectations of a genre? Did writing your novel allow someone else to take a leap and write something else? Did you inspire them? All of these are different ways to gauge the success that you have had as a writer. And they're all really important things for your story to be doing, and much more meaningful way to gauge success. So how does your story also make you feel? I think about Maya Angelou's quote, "There is no greater agony than burying an untold story inside yourself." And I think about this a lot. And it really makes me consider how my writing and my stories have helped me to become better and more of myself. How did I turn the agony of those untold stories inside of me into the joy of a story that I can share with other people, that I have people who are like, oh my gosh, like what's next? I need to know more. Like, why did it end here? I want more of this story. And I know that's a little bit woo-woo, but I think it's vital that writers remember the why behind our writing. What part of our souls and hearts really need to put words on a page? Every word, every completed manuscript is worth celebrating. I have completed 4 manuscripts so far. My arbitrary marker of success is getting an agent to represent me to traditional publishers. I have yet to achieve that. But also, I haven't failed. I have been successful in telling amazing stories that are well written. I have a small but devoted fan base that cheer me on, eagerly awaiting my next project. And I think that that is really important, right? So to the outside world, to society at large, they're gonna be like, yeah, but you don't have an agent yet, so obviously you failed. And that's not true. I know that my craft is good. I know that I have developed as a human being, as a writer, and that there is joy that I find in my manuscripts, and there is joy that other people find in my manuscripts. And so those have to become my measures of success, right? So my second challenge for us, for you, for me, is to be that person who lifts others up, right? Be the writer that celebrates the success of others. Be the one who recommends their books, who champions the impact that they have on readers. I can give you so many mid-list authors that will absolutely blow your mind. And I'm going to leave a list down in the description. Their work has made a huge impact on me, both as a human and as a writer. And I think they're so very, very important, right? And that's what I aspire to be. I want to be them because of the impact that they had on me. To me, that makes them a better author than some of these like really big names, right? And again, that's just me. You might read those bigger name authors that live on the list, and you may say, their books impact me, and that's why I love them. And that is exactly what that's about, right? Everything is subjective in writing. But I think there's so many other writers who aren't given that kind of nod of accomplishment and recognized for what they're doing and how well they write and how well they craft a story. So lifting each other up and celebrating these meaningful successes really does just refill everybody's well, right? There's this thing called shine theory, and it was originally coined by Amanito Sao and Anne Friedman. And it's the idea that when one of us wins, all of us win. And that by helping someone rise to the top and be amazing, you're also going to rise to the top and be amazing. So often, we kind of get wrapped up into those capitalistic aspects of society that wants us to compete, as though there's some weird form of Highlander in publishing and there can only be one amazing author. But in reality, there are enough readers out there for all of us. And when we lift each other up and help each other to shine, we all become successful. If somebody reads this person's books, they might like mine too. And if they like my books, they're probably going to like that other person's because there's some similarities there, right? So I can recommend like, oh, if you liked reading this, try this. And just like send that out there and get people to read more of these books. So get out there, lift up your voices, share all of the successes of the writers that you know. Drop, please, your favorite authors in the comments below so that we can all check out their books and celebrate the impact that they have on publishing. And of course, celebrate your wins, whether it's finishing a manuscript, getting 10 minutes of writing in between work and family events, or just knowing that you read a book that someone is reading and that they're going to take a deep breath and be so incredibly thankful that you wrote it because it's exactly what their soul needed in that moment. And that is important. Take care of yourselves. Keep writing. The world needs your book. See you next time. Happy writing, Scribblers.